Hi guys! So I wanted to let you guys know that my personal project is coming to an end, and so will this vlog, unfortunately too. However, for now, we can continue with today's episode, but I just wanted to be transparent with that before I go into the exciting events of this past week. So as I promised, I said I'd have real-world experiences to tell you about relating the deaf community right here in Washington, D.C. And boy, do I. If you go back and look at some of the D.C. things I mentioned that are available to do here, I mentioned an all-deaf run Starbucks on 8th Street in Northeast, as well as a Gallaudet University just a few blocks away. As a passionate Starbucks person myself, I knew that this would be a very fun activity to try. So I did end up going to the Starbucks last Thursday. I was blown away by the location when I got there. The walls are just covered in murals of art depicting sign language and deaf pride. It's clear that the deaf community is steeped into the walls of the Starbucks, kind of like the tea is steeped behind the counter. Get it? Personally, one of my favorite details was the art on the outside of the location. There was outdoor umbrellas standing outside, and next to this little Starbucks logo, there was an art of the finger spelling for ASL. Well, it's flipped, but yeah. So additionally, on the storefront window, above the logo decal, there was a finger spelling for the individual letters of the word Starbucks. But I learned also that there is a whole unique sign for the word Starbucks, the company, and it goes like this. So you pinch your middle finger like that, and then flick it on your middle finger like that. So I learned that too while I was there. Pretty cool. So for those who don't dabble in American Sign Language, there's these little digital whiteboards you can use that you can grab while you're in line. So write out your order and you can hand it to the barista and they can just manually input it. But as a little challenge for myself, I decided that I was going to sign my order to the barista and just kind of hope for the best, just to kind of get some practice and also give myself a real world challenge, a quantifiable challenge to see if I can get myself across. So it was definitely very intimidating. I felt pretty nervous going into it, and I definitely made some errors here and there, but it was such a thrilling experience. I had a really good time. But I should also definitely attribute my enjoyment to this really incredible barista I had. I didn't catch his name, but it was a little obvious. I was going off the deep end here a little bit and just kind of shooting my shot with my order. But he was very patient and kind, and even correcting my signs, so I knew the right way to do it later in life. Seeing as he could tell I was practicing, we continued the rest of the interaction in ASL. But the most shocking thing to me is that I understood what he was saying. So I guess that's what the result you kind of get from just hard work and perseverance, and you just keep learning. It's sometimes you actually get to see real world results, which is just the most encouraging thing to me in my opinion. So I was with my mom. My mom took me there, so we went to go sit down and wait for our order. And we realized eventually that they weren't going to call out the names on the orders because it's a deaf Starbucks. So to mitigate this, they had a digital screen next to the pickup counter with the orders in progress and the ones completed. So you would go look at that and then check what kind of the status is on your order, and then you go pick it up in accordance with the status. So I thought that was a really, really cool thing. I feel they should kind of have that at everywhere you go, because it was just so nice. Sometimes you don't hear your name called, sometimes they write it down wrong, all sorts of things. So I thought that was a really, really good idea, and it doesn't take away from the things you do or don't have from deaf or hard of hearing baristas. Hi, so we just came back from the ASL Starbucks on 8th Street. It was pretty fun. They have murals and decor specifically representing the deaf community, which is really, really cool. And the baristas were really nice even when we messed up, or namely me messed up. And here's my mom. We got our drinks and stuff in hand. It was a really beautiful location. They designed all the decor specifically to honor the deaf community, so it was just really nice to see. And we learned some new signs along the way, which is helpful. Yeah, so we're on our way to the Gallaudet softball game right now, so we'll see how that turns out. So the next thing I did after that was I went with my mom to a softball game at Gallaudet. It was something else entirely to drive onto campus and just see the college students walking around signing to each other. there's just like not many places you can go and see such like a thriving culture of deaf and hard of hearing people. And all I could think about was just like how lucky we are to be in a city that has historically been one of the most important places in all of deaf American history. It was like a gorgeous day outside, like just the beginning of spring, so cool as well. So it was really, really nice weather. So we settled into like the bleachers behind the base plate, the home plate, and we watched the game unfold. So not only was like the Gallaudet team a mix of deaf and hard of hearing students, but like so was the audience, like all the people who had attended. So it was like family members and peers from school and outside of school that showed up in support of the Gallaudet softball team, but they're also expressing it in a variety of verbal and nonverbal ways. It was just a really great experience that really like gave me insight into like the day-to-day life, like how people operate like in such like a variety of different settings. So it was a really, really helpful experience, and we had a great time too. But eventually the game did have to end, and we had to part ways with our time on the Gallaudet campus. But one thing stuck with me as we were on our way home. There is like literally so many ways to interact with deaf culture in DC every day that if we just pay attention to, we can find. I think that's something that drove me to this project in the first place, right? The deaf and community and population isn't something that should be like ignored or pitied or excluded. It's like a very real thing, and we can learn to let it be part of our lives too. With like a couple of Google searches, you could say hi to someone who uses ASL in your neighborhood. With a quick visit, you could learn to find your new favorite Starbucks location like I did. With an open mind and a receptive heart, we can change our lives for the better through learning American Sign Language and communicating differently. And with a bittersweet heart, I hope whoever may be watching this can take away what I've learned from this too. Every perspective is valuable and important, even if historically society has tried to say otherwise. No matter where you live or what you do, I hope, like me, you choose to keep going. Stay interested, right? That's how we beat those who try to keep others down. So with that, thank you and goodbye. So I think also going into this, I was able to like tap into a lot of the different like ATL skills that we have in the IB program, which is like a really important guideline to our personal projects. So obviously, first and foremost would be the communication aspect of the IB traits, because it's not necessarily communicating in the traditional sense, but the whole point of this project was to be learning how to communicate in like the non-typical way, the way that people don't talk about most often. So like learning how to communicate with people I haven't talked to before in like a setting I haven't like put myself in before. So I think in that sense, that's how I like really tapped into like the communication aspect of this, and also just like communicating with, for instance, a teacher at my school, hashtag Miss Goldine, who has learned like American Sign Language before in school. So she was a really good expert on the subject and was able to guide me through some aspects of like planning my project. So like communicating with her, like also like going out into the real world, like being able to, I don't know, not like encourage myself to communicate with people I haven't like talked to before, like groups I haven't come across with before. So that is, I feel like, one of the stronger IB traits that I was able to tap into in this project. And I definitely really leaned into a bit of like the research ATL trait in this, because a lot of research had to go into this, because the deaf community is something that requires a lot of thought and carefulness when especially you're going out and doing stuff around the group. Like you have to know your stuff, especially with sign language, because it is the means of communication. There's a specific posture and a specific way of doing things, and it's really important to be respectful and considerate. So definitely a lot of research had to go into this, especially because DC is such like a haven for deaf people and hard of hearing people. Like it was very important to me personally to know this stuff. So I made sure when I was going into planning my project and choosing my project and like the goals I had set for myself, that I wanted to be informed and I wanted to keep myself on top of that. So I really prioritized the research skills when going into this, and I learned how to choose and pick sources that would benefit me the most, but also came from people who had knowledge in the area. because if I had chosen sources from people who weren't deaf or hadn't been backed up by any other deaf or hard of hearing people, then I could have been steered in the wrong direction. So especially when you're talking about like sign language and the deaf community, you really have to consider where your sources are coming from and how you use them and how you apply them into the real world. So I thought it was super important to prioritize research when going into this as well. So another thing too, I really did also consider like self-management skills when coming into this project, because I knew I wanted to at least like hold myself accountable for about an episode a week, episode every like week and a half, something like that, because I knew I needed to track my progress like in accordance with like real events happening, like a reasonable time frame, but also something that would like keep me up to pace, like keep me active and engaged with my resources or in my research as well. So a lot of self-management had to be put in this, because I knew that I was going to have to hold myself accountable for all the research I was doing, for all the investigation I was doing, because we're past that point where I need a teacher to guide me through the instructions of my project, because what I'm doing is like there isn't like a designated teacher, like a science teacher, for instance, to lead me through that science project. Like this is something I'm doing for myself. So that's why they call it the personal project, right? It's for you and yourself only. Well, your community too, but this is for your own personal development as a student and as a person. So for sure, definitely like self-management, like that was really important for me, especially as I was moving forward with like something that is like a really complicated topic, something that really does need a lot of thought and precision. So self-management was super important. Also, something that I really prioritized during this whole process was like being able to like think and reflect back on to what I am learning now, to what I was learning then, and like consider how it has become like an integral part of like our history and who we are as Washingtonians. Like as I said, like the deaf community is just like so present, but sometimes we don't know how to see that. So we have to consider like how our history as like an ableist country has like led to the discrimination of like deaf and hard of hearing people, but also how cities like DC help these communities flourish by like keeping open environments and open mindsets, and how also I can help play part of that too. Like a lot of careful thought has to be placed into how I can play a respectful role, like as like an ally of like the deaf community, because you have to be like like a lot of carefulness and consideration has to be part of a project like this. So a lot of thought had to go into this, like again with like the research and the investigation. Like it's super duper important to like consider all aspects of the project, like from the information you're getting on the outside to like what you see in the real world to what you hear around you. Like every bit of it is like super important. And I guess a little bit too, social skills did go into this, because like for example, like when I went out to go to the Starbucks, like it took like spatial awareness and being able to like operate within a social environment to go and do something like that. And you have to know how to like present yourself, especially like with sign language, because posture, like physical composure is like everything. So you have to know how to be able to talk and like communicate effectively with different groups of people, which is something I really focused on, especially kind of towards the end. So even though most of this project was kind of like on the inside, like personal formative research and development, social skills did definitely play a part of that, as I like learned and applied like social rules in sign language to my own posture as I learned and continued to practice it in my life.